Luna and I exploded in the infirmary, nearly running into Alice, Clover, and Tenmyoji. Quark was there as well, of course, but he was just as we'd left him asleep on the bed.
What are you doing here?
I opened my mouth to retort, then thought better of it. If I really wanted people to start trusting each other, well, real changes starts at home. As quickly as I could, I explained the second bomb and the memory card and how we'd come to the infirmary in hopes that we could discover the contents of the latter.
Okay.
Then stick it in already!
Just gonna leave that on the screen for a second. Freaking Clover. Jeez.
Go ahead.
Just as Luna had said, there was a small slot under the screen exactly the right size to fit a memory card. Within moments, the screen was filled with what appeared to be random letters. As Spiff got ready to write any of them down. Super family friendly. I ain't writing those down, I'm taking a picture. What the... I think I'm going to write all that down. Just in case I need it. I doubt I'm going to need it, but I'm going to take a picture anyway. And move your...
6 rows, 22 letters each.
The 25 letters to decode it in the Dio ending. I mean, I have the 26, or is it 20? I have 25 numbers, which is the code to break that. So is it like the 7th letter, the 8th letter, the 5th, the 1st letter? Or is it, could those be pairs? I wouldn't know how to use it. But that's a very good point.
It looks like the odd rows use one set of letters, and the even rows use another set.
Hold on. Odd and even. Odd rows use one set of letters. Oh, okay, I'm seeing it now. Like the CQU is all one, then the BU is all the same, and those all like are the same. Yeah, so it is a pattern.
In other words, the first 2 rows just repeat. Yeah.
Some kind of code?
Doesn't look random to me. I think there might be a pattern. I just don't know what it is.
Now, when I wrote down those numbers, and Incision was saying we didn't need them. What is the 7th, 8th, and 1st? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now, 7, 8, 1 would be MTC. That doesn't help. Probably does. I'd hope it teaches us how to do it. But we wrote down those numbers.
Is there anything else on there? No, it doesn't look like it.
So all we get is this gibberish. Hey, Alice, you haven't said anything for a while. What's up?
Does any of this look familiar to you, Clover?
What do you mean?
Have you seen something like this before? Maybe during your training?
This is...
So you do recognize it.
All right, knock it off, you two. How about you share it with the rest of the class?
Alice sighed and stretched her neck from side to side.
I believe this is an encoded message from a terrorist organization.
What?
They call themselves the Myrmidons.
Ooh, this is Dio's. For some reason, I felt like I'd heard that name before. It's on the knife.
What are the Myrmidons?
I always say Myrmidons, not Myrmidons.
Put simply, they're a bunch of thugs who are trying to destroy or dismantle most of human civilization.
So this thing we're looking at, you think it's theirs?
Because this is the key. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 6 though. There's 6 of these lines, but we only have 5 sets of 5 numbers.
Well, they have a number of different codes, but I do think this is one of them.
Again, if you guys are confused and I'm talking about, when we got out and got the Dio ending, we got the code how to disable the 0 bomb, and 5 sets of 5 numbers, which he said is the way to break the code. It's like the code breaker to get a message out of this.
Then the bomb? It was set by one of the Myrmidons, wasn't it?
Yes. Well, I can't say for sure, of course, but it seems likely.
I got a ton of questions for you, but let me start with this one. What the heck does this thing say?
I don't know. How am I supposed to decode it? I don't have the key. Without a key, it would take literally hundreds of years to decode.
78153. Oh, would the 7th? Hold on. Would the 7th, because again, so you guys know where we are. I'm looking at 78153, which is the first set of 5 numbers. If I go to the 7th one saying C starts as 0, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It'd be T-E-Q? No, that didn't work. Never mind. Or P-X-Y? No, that wouldn't work.
What about you, Clover?
Well, if Alice doesn't know how, I sure don't.
See.
Not much we can do then. We can come back to this code stuff later. I've got another question. Alice, Clover, who the heck are you? Why do you know about this code? You told me your job was to eliminate enemies of the state, or something like that. Just what kind of job is that? I think it's time you told us what you do.
Sorry, but I can't. Because you might be one of them. You might be the person who set the bomb.
It's fair.
Really? And where's your proof? For all I know, you're my enemy. I can't tell you anything.
I mean, I can say I'm not your enemy all the time. I'm your ally all the time, but I'm your friend! That's when all of us get out of here. Then why did you hit betray? Please, we need to find out who did this so we can all escape. We have too little information. We need your help. Fine. If you won't tell us about yourself, then just tell us about the Myrmidons. What else do you know about them?
I'm sorry.
Before I could blink, she leapt up and run out of the room. Balls. I took off after her. I probably didn't catch up because she's fast.
How long are you going to keep following me?
Oh, we are following her. Perfect. I like this thing, but I wish I could take bigger swigs. It's actually pretty... doesn't give me a full gulp until I, like, do 2 of them. So, anyway. Until you tell me what
Then
you know.
why don't you just ask Clover? You already know she works with me.
Well, yeah.
Then why don't you...
I wanted to hear it from you.
Why?
It's a good question. Remember the crew quarters? Or this garden? We got paired up for 2 separate rounds. That means I spent more time with you than anybody else here. Maybe that's it. I guess I'm just curious about you.
What are you talking about?
Oh gosh, she has a pose for being bashful. Gosh. She spun around to hide it, but I caught a blush of red on her cheeks. We walked down the path to where it ended next to the pond. We didn't just try and kill each other this last round, and we're having a stroll down a park? I mean, it works in movies. I stayed silent. Alice sat down on the bench. We gazed at the smooth surface of the pond for several long minutes before she began to speak.
You don't hate me?
Why?
I tried to kill you.
You mean in the AB game?
Yes. I was so scared. Who wouldn't be? Kidnapped and locked up, forced to play some sort of bizarre game. And then we found that bomb. I know
This is
I
the music
probably
box
sounded
playing.
calm, but as soon as we found that thing, all I wanted to do was run away from it as fast as I could. Things just went downhill from there. I remember hearing that Quark had collapsed and running to the infirmary with everyone else.
Oh yeah, we didn't try and kill her. She wouldn't have died. She had like 5 or 6. Yeah, I think she had 6.
When I got there, I realized I couldn't understand what anyone was saying. And everything looked... I don't know how to describe it. It was like watching a video on fast forward, only it was real. Then I started to feel like... It's hard to explain.
This is her
I
about
guess you
Radical
could
6.
say I didn't feel like I was myself, and it only got worse.
It's probably the Radical 6.
Yes, I think so. I don't remember much after that. But when I woke up in the infirmary, suddenly all that fear was back. So all I could think about was getting out of this place as fast as I could. It never even crossed my mind that it could kill you. God help me, even if it had, I don't think I would have cared.
Dang.
See? I'm horrible. You hate me, don't you? Just do it!
Do what?
Kill me! Get it over with!
No. I'm not gonna kill you. Where'd that cut? Like, she doesn't have Radical 6 anymore, right? I don't even hate you.
You're lying! I could have killed you. I would have killed you.
Calm down. No one's killing anyone. A single tear rolled down Alice's cheek. Then another, and another, leaving shiny lines across her face. When I reached out, I saw her tense just slightly. Slowly, I brushed my thumb across her cheek and off, taking her tears with it.
Why are you doing this? You know, you kind of remind me of my father.
That's who you were after, right? People who killed your dad?
Yes.
Did they have anything to do with the Myrmidons?
Will you promise not to tell Clover that I cried?
Come
Keep your
on!
mouth shut. I'll tell you what you want to know. About myself. And about the Myrmidons.
Let's get some story! Sure. Lips are sealed.
Really?
What, crying? I don't remember you crying. I don't remember any crying. Did you see crying? I didn't see any crying, chat. I literally don't see any. All I see is side boob.
Good. All right, then.
Alice took a deep breath and began. Please be voice acted. Please be voice acted. Please be voice acted. Please be voice acted. Dang it. All right, hold on. Let me get a sip of water. Ahem. Wrong pipe. Okay. I'm ready to read a lot. My father is Egyptian, but my mother is French. They met while my mother was in Egypt on vacation and married shortly thereafter. When I was 3, we all moved to the US. My father was a scientist, and his field was cloning. He was recruited by an American lab, which was why we moved. Both of my parents had used English around me from the time I was born, so I didn't have any problems adapting to life in the United States. By my 9th birthday, we'd been there for 6 years. Okay, so she moved when she was 3. I was getting math in my head. That was when it happened. In the middle of the day, my mother showed up at school. Her eyes were red and puffy, but she didn't say anything to me on the drive home. When we arrived, there were several policemen there to meet us. My father had always been a very punctual man, and when dinner time came and went with no sign of him, even I began to realize something terrible had happened. It wasn't until several years later that I finally learned the truth. My father's lab had been attacked by terrorists, and he had been kidnapped. It took several years for you to be told that? Wow. For the rest of my childhood, my mother raised me by myself. I didn't realize it then, but it must have been incredibly difficult for her, as a single mother, alone in a country where any relatives were transatlantic flight away. Dang. She did her best not to let me see it, but every so often when she thought she was alone, the mask would fall away, and in every line of her face, I could see exhaustion and loneliness. As much as I missed my father, it was those moments that made me wish more than anything that he'd never been taken. Fortunately, I was an excellent student and did especially well in math. I earned a full-ride scholarship straight out of high school and spent the next several years studying. This is also backing up the fact that she's not all ice. At least I don't think she is. She still could be. After graduation, I took a job with the Department of Defense, hoping that they might have the resources to help me look for my father. I was immediately assigned to the Special Office of Internal Security. Their purpose is to investigate and sometimes deal with terrorist organizations and other serious threats to the state. I could tell my mother wasn't happy about my decision, but she chose to remain silent about it. Eventually, I learned that the terrorist organization that had taken my father was none other than the Myrmidons. Although at the time, that name didn't mean anything to me. They were suspected of human cloning. Specifically, it was thought that they had begun using cloning techniques to copy their most useful members and expand their ranks. The Myrmidons apparently believed that they could use cloning to create a new race of humans. Now, at last, I knew the reason of my father's abduction. The commander of the Myrmidons is a man named Left. I want to make sure I got my timeline right. I was pretty sure Brother made the Free the Soul and then made the Myrmidons after Left had died. We know his name and his gender, but not his appearance or his age. The Myrmidons are closely associated with the cult known as Free the Soul. We believe that Free the Soul provides their funding. But trying to pin any kind of misdeeds on the cult's leader, a man named Brother, is like trying to nail Jell-O to a wall. That is a great analogy. Oh, that's a good analogy. Brother is supposed to be fairly advanced in years, and rumors say he's so old he can't even get out of bed. Unfortunately, his mind seems to be as sharp as ever. At that point, I hit a wall. I knew the Myrmidons had been behind my father's kidnapping, but that was all I could learn about them. Ooh, hello. Then one day I got a tip that some of them were hiding in a building in the Nevada desert. I headed out immediately. On the way there, my car had some engine trouble and stalled out. I was trying to decide what to do when an SUV appeared out of nowhere. I'll give you one guess who was behind the steering wheel. So I'm guessing there was no all ice. If that real backstory is true. Clover, that was the first time we met. There were 4 other people in the car with her, and when I asked them what they were doing, I got what was just about the last answer I'd expected. Okay. They told me they'd been locked up inside of the very building I'd been on my way to investigate, and that they were currently in pursuit of the people who had kidnapped them in the first place. My priorities shifted very quickly. After a short discussion, I convinced them to allow me to come along. My hope was to find the people they were chasing, who I was certain were Myrmidons. In the end, however, we were unable to track them down. Okay. So we're pretty sure the people who got away were the President Hongo. Aoi, I think, got away too. And Akane? In fact, I still don't know where they might have gone. Eventually, I took Clover and her companions to the SOIS quarters. Internal Security, yeah. Okay. We decided that involving the police would only complicate things. After some questioning, it was determined that the people who had instigated this particular event were not connected to the Myrmidons. We did, however, discover that the mysterious disappearance and subsequent reappearance of several children 9 years prior was connected to Free the Soul. There was also a 6th person in this SUV, although they weren't riding in it per se. Oh no, we had the president in our back trunk. That's right. A middle-aged man who'd just call H for now had been bound and placed in the trunk. A According to the other four, he had been behind the disappearance of the children 9 years earlier. We also learned that his pharmaceutical company, a major player in the world stage, was effectively controlled by Free the Soul. More specifically, I suppose H was a member of Free the Soul and very committed to their cause. So why had he kidnapped all those children? Apparently it had been part of an experiment designed to test the ability of certain people to access what's called the morphogenic field. I don't imagine you've ever heard of it before, so I'll try and give you a quick rundown. This is what we learned in 999, if you guys didn't guess. Simply put, these people can access a sort of field that allows their consciousness to resonate with the consciousness of certain other people. To be honest, it might be simpler to just call it telepathy. The Sois had heard of this particular ability before, and had actually used it in a number of investigations, so I wasn't surprised to learn of its existence. I was shocked, however, to learn that these experiments had been carried out by a member of Free the Soul. If that was the case, then Brother must have known about it. The thought of him discovering a way to control and harness that power was terrifying. It wasn't too long after the incident in Nevada that another tip about the Myrmidons crossed my desk. This time, it claimed that the Myrmidons intended to launch a large-scale biological terrorist attack. My bosses decided that we needed more agents to deal with a threat of that magnitude, and Clover was recruited. Because she'd been a test subject in Nature's experiments, we knew she had the ability to access the morphogenic field, and we wanted to put that ability to use. After several months of training, she was sent on her first mission. She would be tasked with the infiltration and investigation of a Myrmidon cloning lab. I was assigned to be her commanding officer. I hoped that our investigation might also give me a lead on my father's whereabouts. At last, I had a chance to find out what had happened to him. I wouldn't let that chance pass me by. Perhaps that was what kept me from noticing the truth. The whole operation was a trap. The lab was fake, and Clover was captured almost immediately. I got there as fast as I could, but when I arrived, the building was only an empty shell. Ooh. So they got people in all the governments. All the conspirators who had pretended to be researchers and the like had already fled. I searched frantically for Clover until at last, in a basement room, I found her. She had been tied to a chair, but only on the floor next to her was another body. It was my father. He looked as if he'd just been dumped there, and when I got to him, his body was already cold. He was covered in dark, ugly bruises. It wasn't until later that I learned he had died from ruptured organs and internal bleeding. They had beaten him to death. As soon as Clover had been captured, a Myrmidon in a mask had come to visit her. He said that unless she wanted to end up like my father, she would leave them alone and tell her masters at the SOS to do likewise. In retrospect, they must have known who I was and who my father was. That was why they killed him. Perhaps they thought they were sending a message to me. Or that once he was gone, I'd lose my reasoning for chasing them. Wow. They were very, very wrong. Took Clover with me and left. I tried to console myself with the fact that I had, at least, been able to save her. Sometime later, I received a call from the coroner. He told me there was something I needed to see. There in the morgue was my father, cold and pale on a steel table. I could barely stand to look at him, but the coroner insisted. On his arm were 2 rows of numbers comprised of 8s and 9s. It took me a moment to recognize my father's handwriting. He had carved them into his own skin. On his chest was another message, but they were letters this time, not numbers. Not many, just enough to make a short sentence. I love you, Alice. Oof. I broke down crying right there in the morgue. They were the first tears I'd shed since the operation had started, and there was no stopping them. There would be no forgiveness. Not for the monsters who put my father through this. They destroyed my family. I would make them pay, even if I had to die to do it. That night, I made a promise to myself. I would avenge my father. Oof. It didn't take long to figure out that the numbers he'd written were latitude and longitude. They'd pointed to a chemical factory that had been disguised as an abandoned building. Further investigation revealed that it was the mother lode we'd been looking for, the headquarters of the Myrmidons. I think my father must have known how things would turn out. Knowing he was going to die, he'd written the directions to our enemy's fortress on his own body. He'd sacrificed too much for me to waste this opportunity with recklessness. This time, our operation would succeed. This time, I wouldn't let my excitement put Clover or any of my other agents in danger. So we took our time, gathered information, we did our research, and we planned. Finally, we were ready. Ooh. December 25th, 2028 was going to be the day we finally set foot inside the Myrmidon stronghold. But then on the 22nd, only 3 days before the operation was scheduled to begin, a man in a gas mask appeared. So you inhaled that gas, passed out, and woke up here in the AB room?
Yes. Well, there it is. Everything that's happened with the Myrmidons and me. I left a few of the details out, of course, but you get the idea.
Yeah, thanks. Ooh, she gave me a sad sort of smile and stood up. Ooh, have some backstory.
We should go back.
Dang. Not yet. Your story explained a lot, but there's still one big question.
Which is?
Who here is a Myrmidon? One of us planted the bombs, and based off the code we found, it's pretty clear this person is a Myrmidon, right?
Yes.
And I agree that we need to figure out who they are.
What do you propose we do?
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you about. Do you have any clues?
Clues? Well, if I could decrypt that code, it might tell us something, but...
How can we do
I
that?
told you. We need a key. Without that, it's pointless.
What's a key?
A key is a key. It allows you to sort of unlock a code. Myrmidons usually use this huge string of numbers as a key.
Wait, long string of numbers? Could that be...
We wrote them all down. We probably didn't need to.
7815361.
What the hell?
I was almost as surprised as she was. The numbers had just kind of appeared in my mind, and I was just saying them before I knew what I was doing. Alice looked at me incredulously, and I stared back.
Where did... Wait. Can you say that again?
So...
That's 198,449,351 to the third power.
What? Oh, she's good with math. Sure.
That number you just told me. Prime factor decomposition on that number gets you 198,449,351 to the third power.
I probably don't need to write this down, but I'm going to anyway. 4, 9, 3, 5, 1 to the third. You're talking about reducing an integer to a series of prime numbers that you multiply together to get it, right? Like, if you have 30, then you'd get 2 times 3 times 5, right?
Exactly. You probably learned that in junior high, right?
So you're saying that blah, blah, blah is a prime, and if you multiply it by itself 3 times, you get blah, 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 blah.
Yes.
Don't tell me you just did all that in your head.
I did do all of that in my head.
Wow.